Welcome to the Local Marketing Source Weekly Update, brought to you by localmarketingsource.com.
This week's Local Marketing Update is brought to you by Scott Gallagher. Scott is the co-founder of Local Marketing Source and has become the recognized expert in providing online marketing services to local businesses. Follow Scott on Twitter at ScottGallagher5 and on Facebook.com/Scott P. Gallagher.
Hey, well, good afternoon, everyone, and morning for some of us. It's Scott Gallagher here with Local Marketing Source, bringing you a weekly local marketing industry update. Now, next week's LMS call is going to be Wednesday, March 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern. You know, expectations, one of my favorite quotes or lines or whatever you want to put it, and I say this to probably every new client I get. It also helps me earn some respect and trust with the prospect, but that's expectations. And I will say, when expectations are not in alignment, problems arise. Now, take that back a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about expectations in life today, but more so as to what's going on in the SEO, local SEO world. We're going to talk a little bit about a rabbit hole in Google from the knowledge panel and some of the changes that Google is doing to keep us on Google. Next, we're going to talk more about how Google is making it harder to reach google.com from countries outside of the United States. And I'm going to throw some speculation into what this might be all about. Google has also come out, and this is my favorite piece, because this has got me thinking a lot on Google researchers have introduced a patent to rank web pages off of facts and not links. A game changer coming down the road. Still could be a couple of years down the road. And then finally, I want to talk about how to make your blog a local destination and to help you win at local search. All right. So we could call this one the agency tip of the week, or maybe your, dating tip of the week. It doesn't matter. Expectations. I've been on this planet for 39 years, and there's one thing that I've learned, especially in the last decade of my life, is understanding other people's perceptions and other people's feelings. And I think that that's really important, whether it's in business or friendships or relationships. So by no stretch of the imagination am I going on and telling you what I think is what it is. It's just what I believe internally. And as example with expectations, when they're not in alignment, typically that's how relationships start to create problems, regardless of what they are. Now, in the business world, for example, we've got to establish expectations at the beginning part of our agency relationship with our clients. And some of those expectations are going to be time frame, how long it's going to take to get somebody ranked. Don't ever undercut yourself. Activity, work of activity. And one of the biggest problems that we deal with expectations in our business is we're trying to sell something to our clients that they can't touch and feel. They're not going to see results for a period of time. It's not something that we can give guarantees on. And albeit we may be doing a lot of activity in terms of exposure, that activity is not directly resulting in new business, at least not in the initial stages of a client relationship. And so I try to go to great lengths of, one, establishing, hey, you're not under contract with us, but before you make any decisions on our ability to perform, we need 6 months. We need 6 months to get done what we get done. Sports coaches know this all too well during a season. I'm a Blackhawks fan. The Hawks haven't been doing so well the last couple of weeks. Do you think Joe Quenneville is freaking out on the team? No, he's looking at the whole year. And what do they have to do a month from now in order to make the playoffs and whatnot? I was never a football fan until I moved to the United States. And for our international students, that's American football I'm referring to, not, that sport of soccer. But one thing about football that I learned about as well is, they have 16 games in a season, and coaches constantly are talking about only looking at a quarter, looking at 4 games at a pop. You lose one game, yeah, it's a big deal in the whole season, but you can't fret about that in the initial stages. You've got to look at it all. So I try to establish those expectations with our clients that, you've got to bite your tongue. And if you run into problems in the initial stages in the first 3 or 4 months with that client, if they say we're feeling certain ways, we feel like that we've been oversold or any of those terms, I take personal responsibility that was my fault. And it was my fault that we never properly laid out expectations. And I've seen this over and over and over. And so there's many different areas that an internet marketer needs to establish these expectations with their clients. As I'd mentioned, time. The other one is in terms of activity. Okay, so we talk about the 3 pillars of local search: reviews, citations, and profiles. And we go over the client. Okay, we're going to create these types of things, and then they come back to you a month later and say, well, you haven't done this. Well, when are we commissioned? And as experts, when are we commissioned to accomplish what we do? We're the experts that are hired, just like an attorney is hired. And when we hire an attorney, we rely on that attorney to give us their professional advice and to move forward with that. We're no different. But what is different, and I think this is because our industry is so full of so many different types of quote unquote experts, it's kind of difficult to establish yourself entirely as that expert. But the point being is that maybe this week we're not going to create 10 profiles as discussed in the proposal, but we're going to put more effort into acquiring reviews. But next month we may get 15, and then the client says, well, you didn't get 10 this week, you only got 8. What the fuck? Well, no, we can't run our businesses like that. And if we set those expectations up in the beginning stages that this is what we're going to do, no. Your only measurement that you've got to establish with your client is results. And through activity reports, you can say, look, we're putting in the time that we're going to achieve those results in the time forth that we've set forward. When expectations are not in alignment, problems arise. The other point that I wanted to touch on in regards to expectations that I initially started to touch on was understanding people's perceptions. And perceptions are derived from expectations. And so have you ever told somebody when they share something to you and they say, oh, this is, what about this? And then you would turn around and say, oh, you're wrong. No. Well, it's wrong to tell people that they're wrong, especially when it comes to their own feelings. Or, I was told as a child, don't feel this way. You don't need to feel that way. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. A child falls down, they hurt himself, and you go up to them and you say, it's okay. What the fuck? It's okay? No, that kid is sitting there crying in pain, and some adult that never experienced that pain or the emotional trauma that that child may be experiencing, and it's okay? No, it's not. That parent, and I'm guilty of it myself, I try to catch myself, but that parent in itself is guilty of not understanding their children's perceptions and not making them real, or minimizing is a big deal in life. It doesn't matter what types of relationships it is. Somebody tells you something, the way that they feel when they share their feelings, you can't discount those feelings. You have no right in this world to do that. So when a client tells you and says, well, I feel like that I'm being taken, or I'm demonstrating, it doesn't mean that those feelings are right. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, but they are real and they're important to the other person. If it's your husband or your wife or your girlfriend or your children or your business partner, when those feelings are expressed, it's important. And by understanding those and providing empathy, I think empathy is a really big word in, well, it's not really that big of a word because it's amazing how many people don't exhibit empathy in this world these days. But it doesn't mean that I won't. And being empathetic to other situations, because if it's important to them, probably should be important to you if you've got any type of relationship with them. All right. Now, I don't know how qualified I am to be able to share some of that. I'm not qualified at all because I didn't take any psychology classes. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to help people's emotional lives. I'm here to help people make some money. But I think it's something that's very important, and I haven't lost anybody on the line, so hopefully there was some value in that. But let's get to some real internet marketing stuff here. I'd mentioned something about a rabbit hole. This is coming from Blumenthal. I just thought it was a really good piece, and it's not really got to talk about it now. But just as an expression, as evidence here. Now, we all know what the knowledge graph is with Google. And we've talked about this a lot on how Google is trying to be a destination portal. You go to Google and you type in weather. You go and type in time. There's so many different things that you can type in that you don't have to go to another site to get the information. Google gives it to you. We've seen integration into Google products. We've seen Google Local be another destination. All around the board in all of Google's products, they're making efforts to become destinations. We know that they've started to sell hotels. They've taken bookings, car rentals, airplane tickets. And essentially, they've negotiated contracts with a lot of these sites where they have back-end access as an affiliate. Now, the rabbit hole that I'm referring to with the knowledge panel, this was not something that I'd really thought about, and it was not really discussed in the industry when the knowledge graph was released. But essentially now, the knowledge graph ultimately empowers Google to keep you entirely on their framework. When I started on the internet, it was 1994, and I was in grade 14. Yeah, I went to grade 14 in Ontario. And when I started in 1994, I'll never forget and getting onto the site called yahoo.com, and it had all these blue links on it. And I just remember thinking to myself, holy Moses, this internet is massive. And it wasn't for a good month that I had never left Yahoo. My perception of the internet was Yahoo, and I was overwhelmed with the amount of information that was out there. I couldn't believe it. Now, I mean, you can't even scale the amount of information that exists on the internet today than it did 21 years ago. Wow, 21 years. My God. So, Yahoo was a destination site, and ultimately being a search engine, we know what happened. And what I find amazing is Google, as I'm talking about this and thinking about this, Google is replicating Yahoo's business model from 20 years ago with a different approach. That with their knowledge graph, it keeps people on Google. In other words, that's where their ads are being displayed. In other words, somebody searches for one brand name, Google could very easily insert other brands into the advertising space. Or Google could throw in Canadian pharmaceutical drug suppliers into US-based searches. See the mess that they can create. Well, I just wanted to throw it out there that their knowledge graph is definitely a key point to keep Google as a destination place, and that's huge. So on that note, we can move on. We got Good. We got some international people on the line. Oh, what's going on here? Okay, I guess I'm back. Guess what, guys? 2 weeks, my MacBook Pro was gone. Listen to this story. So, my MacBook dies on a Thursday. I bring it to my local guy here, and he opens it up, and he's like, "Man, I don't know, but I put in a new hard drive, and she booted up." I was like, "All right, let's buy a new hard drive." So I bought a new hard drive, brought it back. It worked for half an hour at home, and then it froze up on me at night. I was like, oh, man. Brought it back to my guy, and he's like, "Man, this was now Wednesday, I think, the following Wednesday, 6 days later." And brought it to him on Wednesday, and he's like, "Oh, God, it's the only thing I can think of is the logic board." We did all the research and everything that was out there. I researched for hours, and sure enough, the only thing left that it could be after doing everything was the fact that it was the motherboard. $1,000 to buy one, get it installed. And I thought, man, $1,000. All right. So that Thursday morning, I sent him an email. I said, "Do it. Order the motherboard." He emails me back 3 hours later and says, "I'm not ordering your motherboard. Call me ASAP." Well, okay. I'm your customer, and I asked you to order it. Now you just blatantly told me you're not ordering it. So I call him up, and he's like, "Scott, you won't believe this." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Yesterday, Apple sent out an international recall on your logic board." He said, "The rep that was on the phone that I had verified with the manager said that they're going to replace everything for you for free on that motherboard." And I thought, this is too good to be true. This is you telling me this just happened yesterday? He says, "Yeah." So I went and did research on it, and sure enough, there was a product recall. Apple, when they get 0.5% of their products are defective, they issue a recall. So that resulted in about 500,000 units for them. This was the only product in the last year and a half that they've issued a recall on. The previous recall was for the iPhone 4 with the debunk power button. So they don't issue a lot of recalls, but they said they were going to replace it. So I brought it into them. They looked at it. They said, "Yep, your motherboard's toast. We're going to replace it for you for free." And then he said, your DVD drive is broken." I said, "Yeah, it's broken." He says, "All right, we'll replace that." I said, "No, I don't want to pay for it." No, we'll replace it for free." I said, "Are you sure? My ex-girlfriend's kids put food into it. We broke it." He goes, "Yeah, we'll replace it for free." I was like, "Okay, we'll see." Pick up my computer yesterday. Get this, guys. So I have a new motherboard. They replaced the chassis of the entire computer. That's the whole frame, because it was scratched and it didn't seat properly. It didn't seat properly because I dropped my laptop one day, or my son or something. They replaced the DVD. They replaced the chassis. They replaced the monitor, the display, because I don't know why. Everything seemed fine to me. It looked good. The only thing I have left is my back plate, my battery, my RAM, and my hard drive. Other than that, I have a brand new computer. It's 3 years old. It's 2 years out of warranty, and Apple replaced it all. Guys, you pay for what you get in this world. I paid $2,000 for this machine, and it is now 3 years old. It's lasted longer than any PC I've ever had. It runs like a dream. There's a reason why Apple is the richest company on the planet. So there's my plug, and I'm not getting paid for it. All right, but Google is making it harder to reach Google.com from outside the United States. Google says that this is to help local searchers. Now, if anybody that's been out of the United States knows all about this. For anybody that's been in the U.S., I'm sorry for all my American friends, but Americans and America in general is very, very close-minded that the world revolves around them. It doesn't. There's frustrations for internet marketers outside of the United States. You wouldn't believe it. Even when I go home to Canada, it's just some things are just like the Netflix experience in Canada is about 1/5 of that of here in the United States. So Google.com shows different results than Google.ca or Google.co.nz. Nick, do you guys say Z or Z? Curious. Um, and so sometimes when you're outside of the United States, you want to get international results. You don't want to get just for New Zealand or just Canada. And so that's some of the reasons why you go to google.com. You may have clients in, outside of your home country that are in the United States, and you'd want to check it out. So what you'd have to do is you would do a search on Google, and then down at the bottom it would say, use google.com instead, and you'd click on that. Well, Google has removed that link, making it extremely difficult to let international users use google.com. Now, what I find most interesting, and I'm just being presumptuous here, is that, you see, weren't we reading about 6 months ago? Remember those antitrust lawsuits in the United Kingdom? Most recently, Canada has started a lawsuit against Google. Even Australia has got pending lawsuits, and it all comes down to these countries want Google to censor their search results. And we know how big Google is about saying we don't want to censor search results. What I find most amazing is that I would have thought that the United States would have been one of the first developing Western nations that says, yeah, you got to censor it. And it's not. Canada wants to censor. United Kingdom. There's a variety of countries that have come together, and Google actually agreed with the UK in different senses. So how do you do that? You can't censor google.com in one country and in not another country. So start a new product and don't allow them to have access to the product. So Google was actually asked about this and they denied it. But it makes perfect sense to me. It's a very simple solution, and it gets their hands washed and they get out of their problems. Need some water. All right. So Google researchers have introduced a new patent. This patent, reading it, it's very clear that Google wants to rank web pages on facts and not links. I don't want to say not links, but facts. And you see, I think Larry Page's and Sergey Brin's story about how Google started speaks immense volumes about what Google is about. What I mean by that is Google is not a company of a bunch of engineers that create infinitely long algorithms to try and rank web pages. They're a bunch of engineers that are just trying to give the most relevant result. And, when I started in SEO and I thought relevancy and relevant results, and, Google's there just, Google now wants to give you answers before you ask them. And I really didn't get what relevant really meant. But I feel like I definitely have a good understanding now of what relevancy genuinely means. If we're doing a search for chiropractor and we do it on a desktop versus a mobile device, the mobile device is going to have more propensity to show local results, where your desktop device, the first listing is going to be Wikipedia. But then you throw in a geomod and then Google bumps up the local results because it's more likely that you're finding a local chiropractor and you're not trying to do research on chiropractors. So how do we define a relevant web page for a search? Well, Google has decided they started out with links. Now there's about 10,000 different things that they look at to determine relevancy. But really, if we could remove our minds from technology limitations and put our mindset for a Google algorithm in terms of idealistic values, then we can really begin to expand our minds in terms of what these engineers are are really trying to accomplish, not what they have today. And so, from a technological standpoint, if these engineers can figure out ways to evaluate relevancy of facts on pages, it'd be brilliant. It'd be incredible. You throw social aspects into that, of course, links are not going to have a lot of influence. I mean, because these are going to be, it's interesting because what we're creating here is real art. That a web page that is based off of facts and social signals over time ultimately is going to, I just think of all these different factors that they can measure all this. Today, the technology exists to do it, and it'd be brilliant. Whereas links, I mean, so what that somebody else is talking about me? Yeah, it gives me some authority that other people are talking about me. But it's like me with my course, okay? The way I see it with Local Marketing Source, and this is where I get really exciting with it, is Local Marketing Source is not a big company. We don't have tens of thousands of students. We've never done, whether we've promoted somebody else or somebody else has promoted us, we've never done a joint venture relationship. We didn't want to go down that path because I don't know another word to use, and I don't really want to use the word that I'm thinking of. We didn't want to be somebody else's whore. you know, we really believed in our material. We really believe in our company, and we really believe that when we bring students in, we can make them happy. Not everybody, but a good majority. And when we look at some of our metrics of Local Marketing Source versus some of my colleagues in the industry, nobody understands. Nobody believes us that our refund rates are at what they are. Nobody believes us that our student retention is as many months as it is. And we feel that is because we've differentiated ourselves at Local Marketing Source from the others, that we're trying to make a good business here, and we know that we're going to make more money the happier we make people, and the longer we can keep students at Local Marketing Source, the better off our business is going to be. It's pretty simple. So I am that position to my students. I work for my students. You guys are paying me, and I am the employee. In other words, I'm doing what we can to create an environment that is satisfactory, that does keep these people. All right, I went on that tangent. Now I'm relating that to what Google is really doing here in terms of web pages. Building link networks reminds me of like multi-level marketing, reminds me of joint venture relationships. Kind of that. It just feels a little sleazier. you know Multi-level marketing, we know we're all fearful of it. Well, joint venture relationships is the exact same thing. So anybody that's ever participated in a joint venture is no different than a multi-level marketer, in my opinion. And that model is not sustainable, in my opinion. It works for the short term, but it is not a long-term viable model. And I think a linking system is just that, because we're subject to so much manipulation that we can get short-term gains with link acquisitions, but we can't sustain that for the long term. Now, facts, I create pieces of content and it goes viral because it's good. Don't you think I should get authority for that? Don't you think that piece that I create is really, really good should have greater authority than my competitor's piece that they've had one person, just all they do is just trying to get link exposure to it? Because I created a good quality piece for one of my local clients or for myself. So that's why I'm really excited about this patent. And, I was just having a meeting with a prospect in Canada, actually hometown of my favorite band, the Tragically Hip, but they're from Kingston, Ontario. And they started throwing around different terms, and they said, "Oh man, the guy, we got hit so hard when we got hit with Panda." As soon as somebody says I got hit hard by Panda or Penguin or Hummingbird, you know immediately that they don't know what they're doing with SEO, because you should not be getting hit like that. These updates, I believe that if we were doing things right as SEOers, we should be begging for more updates. Because if we're right, these updates are becoming closer in alignment with what we're doing. In other words, facts and not links. Sorry, guys, I just have a sick dog in the office. You got a mess to clean up. Were they both burping at the same time? Oh, sorry about that. We have our dogs in our office, and I've never changed it. They say a lot about that. They say people are happier working and get more done. And we're going to set up a webcam and call the UPS guy in, call in the pizza delivery guys, because I'll tell you, it is a riot. We've got, between these two dogs, they weigh, there's over 200 pounds of dog. And they both have big barks, but they are the friendliest girls ever, 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 ever. And it's just so awesome to watch people come up to the door and see them freak out. And oh, hang on a second, guys. Sorry, that was pretty unprofessional of me. I had to give my credit card to somebody because my fault. I don't have any paper towel or toilet paper in my office. We have a little bit, but so all right, I'm back. All right, keep going. And the last piece here, the last piece that I just want to talk about before we get into questions is how to make your blog a local destination so you can win at local search. Oh, there's my camera. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some of the different things that you can write about on a local blog of a local business for some of your local clients to really create some authority. Some of the stuff that we're talking about here. What were we just talking about? Facts, right? Two different things. You see how I planned this out? Good transition here, huh? No, I didn't plan that out. It just happened the way I put my notes together. But I did want to talk about different topics to establish some of that authority and some of those facts on your local blog. And the internet marketing industry is finally starting to get a little bit closer to the marketing world, but it's amazing that they still talk about things like define your audience. Well, of course we got to do that. And so I could use different examples here. In my case, I'm going to use chiropractors. And defining who your audience. Well, different chiropractors are going to have different audience groups. There's pain management patients, and then there are wellness patients. There are children. There are condition specific. So I just gave you 4 different segments right there that we can define. Step 2, who's creating the material? Who's writing it? Is it going to be the doctor? Is it the internal staff? Is it the third party? What information is going to be shared? And of course, have a plan that's created for content. We know about these things, but now it comes down to internal blogs, and we do create content and distribute it to associations, to magazines, to journals, trade publications. But on the local side of it, we also want to get local content, with the local newspaper, and of course content for the local blog. But people often struggle, like, well, who comes to the blog? How do we, how do we drive traffic to it? How do we get exposure on it? How do we get shares and whatnot? And what a lot of businesses don't leverage is the community aspects of it. And I remember 5-6 years ago, we did email marketing, and this was some of the stuff that we were doing with email marketing back in the day for our local clients was, the local feel good story, and that stuff still works. And it's that type of content that could be very relevant on a blog, for example, local news that's going on. But I want to add to that, feel good news. Local boy saves dog and whatnot. And when that's socially propagated, and that could be shared, one thing that Facebook is actually, this wasn't in my notes, I just read this in the last week or two, but was like these community groups, buy and sell groups, that local types of groups on Facebook. They're popping up everywhere. So we're going to see ways to communicate with a local audience through Facebook of some sense, and that's where some of this stuff will be shared. You could talk about local events or sponsorships and charities. But I think that pieces like creating top 5 lists. I'm in a town of 30,000 people. Creating the top 5 lists of your favorite burger joints, or your favorite steak restaurants, your favorite stores. And that's type of content that ultimately will get some exposure. And another great idea was interviewing local figures. Like one of our clients, for example, is just hired the local radio station, 105.5, and they're advertising on this radio station. And so, radio hosts are local celebrities. Well, that's one thing that we're moving forward with of creating that. And, for us to have that exposure, well, of course that's going to be shared. And guess what? He's probably going to share it on the radio. And if it's shared on the radio, guess what? You're going to have exposure on the radio's website. So interviewing local figures is also a really good idea. One that's a little risky, but I also think will create content, is reviewing local businesses. So that comes to the conclusion of this week's update. I will take 30 seconds here and come back and answer any questions that you guys might have.
Well, thanks for watching the Local Marketing Industry Update. We've got these things coming out every single week, so if you liked with what you heard, just click the button right above me right here to subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to get a little bit more, right over here, go check out localmarketingsource.com. We've got free reports that you can grab. You can even register for a free marketing course to get in and see the portal. Or just go ahead and follow us on some of the social channels. We'll be around. Until next time.